Okay, this is Unit 2, Section 3 homework. This is the third page, 17 to 28. I'm sure y'all were going to love this page right here. I think this is probably the easiest page of this homework, like by far, because I have absolutely no calculator needed, no math needed. I mean, it is math, but it's not solving, right? So let's look at C, this whole section right here. My directions tell me to write the ordered pairs that are represented. Okay, if you forget or need to refresh your memory, an ordered pair is simply x comma y. So all I'm doing for these is writing the x comma y that is shown for each question. Okay, so if I look at all these, we also know from the notes f of x equals y. And I've said this before, if it's in parentheses, it's x. If it's not, it's y. So if I need to, if this helps, you can go through and label x, y. And so my directions just say write the ordered pair, which is this in parentheses. So I'm just going to take these two numbers and go, okay, 13, negative 9. That's my answer. That's all I'm doing on these. Okay, so let's look at 18. Again, if it helps to label, let's do x and y. And I just want my x comma y. So I do parentheses, x is negative 15, and then y is 3 over 4. And I'm done. All right, 19. Hey, these are going to go quick. I have x and I have y. So my ordered pair is parentheses, x is 5 over 7, and y is square root of 23. And again, I'm giving you these weird numbers and symbols and all that just to show you it doesn't matter what is there, the process is the same, the answer is the same. Okay, so 20, I have x, I have y. So parentheses, x is square root of 51, and y is 1.6, and that's my answer. 21, I have x, I have y. Okay, so my ordered pair is 0, comma, 2, pi. And I'm done. So there's really not a whole lot of explaining for these, as long as you know that it's x, y, and luckily they're always in order. So ordered pair is pi over 2 and negative 1. And I'm done. Finished with those 6. Look at that, 6 problems in less than 3 minutes. And that's with explaining. That's not bad. Okay, so the last 6 on this page, we're going to read the directions first because it tells us what to do. It says list the domain and range for the relation. Okay. Now I probably could have put the D and the R like I did before, but that's okay. Let's go ahead and write it out. So we have domain, range. And if you remember from earlier, we did this on, what was it, 2-1? You know, you do little fancy brackets. And all I'm going to do is my domain values are all the x values. My range values are all the y values. So if you want to, on, say, 23, I can go label x, y, x, y, x, y. Okay, remember x is in parentheses, y is not. And now, for domain, I simply list all my x values. So I have negative 6, 5, and 11. And that's my answer. Well, for domain. And then range is all the y values. So I have negative 31, 2, and 20. Okay, and then I'm done with that question. I wrote my domain and range, so that's all it asked for. And so I can move on to the next one. So you're just doing x and y. Okay, 24, I have x, y, x, y, x, y. Okay, so I have domain, fancy bracket, range, fancy bracket. So domain is all my x's. So I do negative 3, 0, and 4. And my range is all my y values. So I have 12, 3, and 19. And I'm done with 24. Okay, 25. X, Y, X, Y, X, Y. So I label them, and then I just write domain, fancy bracket, range, fancy bracket. So my domain is all my X values, so everything in parentheses. I have 1, 9, and 36. And for Y, everything not in parentheses, so -1, -3, and -6. And I know I've said this before, but I'll go ahead and mention it again. The order of the numbers doesn't matter as long as it's the same numbers. A lot of people like to write these from least to greatest, which is fine. So oftentimes on a test or multiple choice kind of thing, you'll see them written in least to greatest. But as long as the numbers are the exact same numbers, the order does not matter, okay? So that's why I'm not really concerned about the order, as long as you know which ones are domain, which ones are range. All right, 26, we have X, Y, X, Y, X, Y. Now, domain, fancy bracket, range, fancy bracket. And my domain is all my X values. So I have -1, 5, and 9. Range, Y values. Oh, look, I have 2 10s. And remember from earlier, and if you didn't, I'll remind you, that if you have repeating numbers, you don't have to write them twice, okay? So because I have 2 10s, I'm just going to write 10 once, and then 2, and then that's it. So the question you really want is just where all of the range is the same number, right? That'd be great, because you only have to write it once. All right, 27. Look, you see a bunch of fractions, you might panic, but again, I do this to show you the process does not change. It doesn't matter what is there as long as you put it in the right spot. So we still have X, Y, X, Y, X, Y, okay? I have domain, fancy bracket, range, fancy bracket. So domain is X, -2, 9/2, and 11/2. Okay, range is the Y values. So we have 5/3, 6, and 20/3. Some of y'all might be wondering where these numbers came from, if I just made them up. I did not. I actually typed in a real function and just pulled numbers out of the table. So these represent a real function. Now I couldn't tell you what they are now because I just made a bunch of stuff up. Like I used absolute value, exponential, quadratic, inverse, rational, stuff like that. So couldn't tell you what they are now, but they do represent real functions. Even though I put relation, these are functions. But anyways, not important. All right, last one. X, Y, X, Y, X, Y. That one looks like a Y. Okay, and I do domain, fancy bracket, range, fancy bracket. So domain is all the X's, -3, 3, and 8. Range is all the Y's, 1/8, 8, and 256. And we're done. Look at that. We're done with that page, with that problem, and that means we're done with the video.